I'd tell you the details, but it'd sound like I made them up.
Your problem is you spent your whole life thinking there are rules. There aren't.
Believing as I do, like the good Dr. King said, a man should be judged on the content of his character, not the color of his skin.
Yeah, he's dead. You're gonna need a different quote.
I just charged for parking.
You think they're going to ask questions when they come with their pitchforks and their torches?
It's just a flying saucer. We gotta go.
You had a piece of pie like that since the Garden of Eden.
Simply deliver a message when the time comes.
Message? To who?
To the wicked.
We're very friendly people.
No, that's not it. Pretty unfriendly, actually.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of... Actually, you know what? Stop. I'm going to try something. Jack. Okay.
Oh my god, what's happening? I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared.
Just go with it.
Okay.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun. Okay. Huzzah, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Very Friendly People, the Fargo Character Analysis Podcast. I am your humble servant, Thomas Potts, and with me is my brother-in-arms.
I am Sir Jack Breeden, Esquire.
That is right, yes, and how dost thou fare, Sir Breeden?
Dost thou... Pretty good. Yep, pretty good. Thanking you merrily, sir. What about you?
Oh, well, I thank thee. I be well, thank the good Lord, and thank you for asking as well.
And king and country, of course.
Yes, it's funny you should mention kings, because the reason we are speaking this way is we are in the presence of royalty.
Ah...
Yeah, now, Jack, I think the penny's dropped. Now, I think now Jack sees what I was going for with this intro now.
Yes, I was caught by surprise. I'm not sure what the voice I chose was.
I wasn't either, Jack, don't worry.
Oh my god.
But yes, tonight we will be looking at Stavros Milos, the supermarket king of Minnesota. So this is going to be an interesting one in as much as he is a main character, but he's sort of the main character of the B plot of the first series.
Definitely. He certainly, his presence kind of feeds more into other characters' kind of storylines. Malvo obviously is the main focus, I think, kind of highlighting his evil, and he's kind of the victim of that. But it's not without a good characterization, not without a good story and a good plot. I'm quite a fan of this character, actually.
Me too, absolutely. And obviously there's also the fact that this character is the solo connection between this season and the movie. I think, actually, in the whole of the Fargo series, there's been this connection, and I think one throwaway line in season 3, which have been the only concrete connections between the series and the movie.
Yeah, other than the locations and places, and the kind of spiritual successor characters you have, like Molly and Marge. Yeah, it was certainly kind of a mind blow the first time watching this, being like, wait, what's he found? And being like, oh my god, that's from the movie! Holy
exactly.
crap! Because so many people weren't sure whether or not it was going to be a remake of the movie, whether or not it was a spiritual successor, whether or not it was a direct sequel. And it's kind of a mixture of all of those.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it was such a mind blow and a great little tidbit to the movie, to what came before.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and it kind of establishes a lot of interesting themes as well. It's almost like, since this story kind of runs parallel to the A plot, there's a lot of recurring themes and a lot of pieces that just kind of, if they don't match up narratively, they match up thematically. In fact, I wrote in my notes that this might be Malvo's Mike Yanagita, in as much as it doesn't. In as much as it's for Malvo, this is. Well, I guess what's really interesting is that Malvo's part of the A plot is just him just doing what he likes doing. That's his hobby. But the B plot is his actual job. When he's obviously hired by Stavros in order to find out who's been blackmailing him. And so it's interesting that would be the B plot.
Yeah, it's interesting having the B plot be his kind of, not backstory, but his insight into what he's like as a man, and his philosophy and his highlighting his evilness. But it's also the stuff he does with the Supermarket King also informs Gus. The stuff that he does with Stavros then feeds into the A plot. So the whole reason of him doing this B plot essentially just helps the A plot kind of draws Malvo back into it, weirdly.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because he lets poor Stavros have it. I mean, it is literally biblical, the things that he inflicts upon this poor man.
Truly, overtly biblical. I mean, if you've seen the show, you'll know exactly, the plagues of frogs. No one's going to miss that, really, are they?
Exactly. So, yeah, for those of you who don't know, in the Bible, the book of Exodus, the story of Moses, there was several plagues that were inflicted upon the people of Egypt because Pharaoh wouldn't let his people go. So I was wondering, is there something... Well, I was trying to think, what do you think that Malvo wants from Stavros? Does he want anything concrete? Or... I mean, obviously he goes after the money, but you get the sense that Malvo isn't really that interested in monetary gain. He's not really that way inclined. So do you think he's after something else?
Yeah, I think the money is certainly a short-term goal, because obviously money's going to be useful to him. But yeah, I think it's definitely not it's not a strategy for greed or for any kind of gain in terms of money-wise or political-wise or power-wise, in terms of physical, concrete power. I think him and the Supermarket King is more of a biblical kind of battle of the philosophy, I think, for Malvo. Lester is kind of his destiny intertwined, is his counterpart. Those two just keep cropping up in each other's lives here and there, and affects his life in a physical way. But I think with Stavros, he sees something being this, you may think he's a biblical evil, is he the devil or not? It's inconsequential. I think he himself believes, Malvo that is, he almost believes his own hype, his own evil, his own devilishness. I think he deep down may think, you know what, I could be evil incarnate. And he sees this egotistical man with money problems and wife problems and business problems, and he sees these very easily corrupted souls, these people who are just on the edge, and I think he just loves it. He just enjoys tormenting people.
I'm going to tell you my interpretation, which was that Stavros seems to have established a story, a narrative for himself. You see that he's sold these books called American Phoenix, and it's about his own rise to the heights of fame and the heights of becoming the Supermarket King. And I think that Malvo, as a collector of stories, he looks at this man and he's like, what is this guy hiding? Because as Malvo, Malvo believes that everybody has this inner animal. Everybody has their own inner demons, and he sees Milos, and he's like, "What is this guy hiding?" He wants to try and get Milos's story out, and so by doing all these things, because I think he very quickly realizes this man fears God more than anything else. or at the very least, he seems to have almost kind of forgotten God. But if I bring that fear of God back to the forefront, I can break this guy. And so, ironically, the devil starts taking on the role within the story of God, which is, theologically backwards, but it's fascinating to observe. And obviously the thing that Milos has been hiding, because he claims to be this sort of self-made guy, when in reality it was, pick your poison. Either it was divine intervention, or it was just pure blind luck that he found that case of money frozen in the snow.
And either way, whether it be blind luck or God's intervention, Stavros kind of he likes to, I think, portray himself as this saint, as this man who believes in God, and was given a gift by God, but he's kind of turned his back on him. He's absolutely just now driven by ego, and I think it's that kind of twisted narrative he's fooled himself into, of like, I'm in God's good books. Actually, I'm one of the good ones. When I die, I'm getting in. And so it is that twisted role reversal of Malvo being God testing his faith. I suppose rather than tempting him into evil, it is more like God going, actually, you've thrown my gifts back in my face, and this is my wrath. This is my answer to your greed and your vice and your sin.
And going back to the Bible, there is a lot of precedent for this, particularly. So I'm actually looking at the book of Daniel at the moment in my sort of like Bible study group that I go to, and there's several different encounters. So, for example, the King Nebuchadnezzar, who firsthand he sees. Exactly. And this tale of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he throws them into the fiery furnace, but they're protected. And they come out, and he's like, oh, clearly, their God has protected them from the fiery furnace. And yet, he still falls into his old ways and is able, and he looks upon Babylon, and he's like, I have built all of this by my own hand, and I am effectively a god. And so he is given the mind of a beast for a while. Which again kind of ties into this whole sort of man-animal sort of narrative.
Absolutely.
And then when it's only when he sort of repents that his mind is given back to him, and then years later his son does exactly the same thing that his father did, but again he's got the benefit of his father's hindsight. And yet he still, falls into this pride. And I think it's a very similar thing for Milos, even though when he says... Because it starts off with him praying, saying, if you get me through this, I will devote my life to serving you. But we cut to him, years later, and he's grown successful. And like you say, I think he sees his relationship with God, like you've said, of just like, me and him are good. He says, me and God have got an understanding between us.
Yes.
And it's putting him at the same level of God, and it's like, oh, that's not going to put you in good stead, to be honest, mate.
No, he's grown fat on his throne from all these years of gifts and success, and has forgotten what it's like to struggle.
I mean, he carries himself almost like a mob boss, when he says, you don't become the supermarket king of Minnesota without making a few enemies.
Yes, and it's like, little lacking
mate,
as
you
well.
own a supermarket. Sameenko, yes.
Sameenko's standing there like a fire... what does he say, Malvo?
Who's the fire hydrant? Because he wears all red.
Yeah. And he's sort of bigging him up, being like, what sport did he play? Was he like a hockey coach or something like that?
Yeah.
And it's like, why is that intimidating to a... You're trying to intimidate, the devil himself. Oh, it's He's a funny character, Stavros. I particularly like the motif of Saint Lawrence. Who
was he called? Patron Saint of Hardasses.
Patron Saint of Hardasses. Yeah. Who was being burnt by the Romans and joked, saying, "Turn me over. I'm done on this side." Which is great. And then of course that's followed on by the last line of that scene of him just with his little hand fan going, God, it's goddamn hot in here. And it's like
that's a good point.
Yeah, he's just everything he does, he's full of contradictions, and he's just so unaware of just how sort of unfaithful to God that he truly is. He's another character who's definitely driven by ego.
Yes.
Certainly a lot more sympathetic than others. Hint, hint, Lester. I say that like he's going to be listening to the show. like if you're listening out there, Lester, just let it be known. But yeah,
he somehow escaped from that frozen pond and is like, "Oh, they're talking about me. They're saying what?"
But yeah, definitely a narcissist. But not a. I don't know, malevolent maybe, but certainly not a. What's the word I'm looking for?
He's not an out and out villain. But
yeah.
Like you say, you know, you that kind of wealth will change you. You know, whether you want it to or not. Because I think you see him when he's a younger man. And by the way, can I just say, the casting of the younger version of Oliver Platt, this guy called Carlos Diaz, like, they not only just the face, but also like the way of speaking and the voice and the mannerisms, absolutely note perfect. I know, brilliant, yeah, absolutely fantastic. It's those one like scene character actors in this show. They're just superb, absolutely superb. And yeah, Carlos does such a good job, and Oliver Platt he's you know, from West Wing, like he's such a good choice for this show. He fits in perfectly. I'm sad to say, like, this was the first thing I'd ever seen Oliver Platt in. I think the only other thing I can recall seeing him in is in the Jon Favreau movie Chef, where he plays the food critic. Yes, yeah, he's good in that. He's also in X-Men First Class. Have you seen that? I think you've seen. Is he? Yeah, he's one of the agents at like the compound that Kevin Bacon killed. I know Azrael like teleports him up like into the sky and he falls down. He dies. Yes. He's only like a bit part, but again, Oliver Platt is. Oh, I love him so good, so good. He's good in Frost v. Nixon as well. Frost v. Nixon is a phenomenal. Of course, he was. Yes, that is a great film. Actually, yes, I do remember him in that as well. But he's got a very interesting acting method. I don't know if you read this in the Big Fargo book. Noah Hawley was talking about. Oliver Platt has this very bizarre way of approaching his lines. Oh no, I you know what? I actually haven't read that part. Or if I have, I've read the book like a year ago maybe. But yeah, I must have missed that in my research. Where's that? It's in one of the interviews. It's not with Oliver Platt. It's with one of the other actors who were talking about Oliver Platt. Right. It might have been with Billy Bob. But I think but Noah Hawley says that Oliver Platt came to him when he first met him and was like, "I apologize in advance. I'm not going to say anything that you've written." And he said that every time they would do a take, he would sort of say the line, but in his own words. And then he'd always say, "No, that's not right." And then he'd say it again slightly differently, but then he'd say, "No, that's not right." And he'd keep doing that until he actually arrived at the line that was written in the script. And that was when he would stop. And so it just kind of made me think of, you know, when you see, like, because I've seen like workshops with actors doing this with Shakespeare, where they say the lines in their own sort of way, is just a way of kind of better understanding the lines. And I guess Oliver Platt might have a similar tendency. And I don't know if he does this with every part, but I just found that a really, really interesting way of approaching these lines. I don't think I've ever come across anyone doing something kind of like that anyway. I know, of course, you know, people change lines all the time. I was doing a play about a month ago, and it does help just slightly tweaking certain things to kind of help the flow. And if you get the basic understanding, the basic gist of the meaning, and if you get most of the words right, if you you know, if you say your cue for another actor, of course that is an absolute must, because that, you know, you don't want to sort of drop them in it, being like, oh god, I've got absolutely no idea my line's coming in. But it's interesting, him just going through that process of understanding the meaning and how the character would honestly and earnestly say it naturally, and then arriving just at the line at the end. Yeah, because again, it It is a very naturalistic performance when you compare it to, say, like... Because I think Martin Freeman, like, it's a fantastic performance, but it's very idiosyncratic and very... slightly more put upon than the more kind of natural performance that I think Oliver Platt gives.
He's a definite archetype.
Yes.
He's playing into, while Oliver Platt is definitely kind of more subdued.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And going back to Stavros and Sameenko, or more specifically Sameenko, do you remember the scene where... Because Sameenko from the very beginning doesn't like Malvo. I don't know whether it's a case of that he just thinks that this guy's sort of taking them for a ride, or if he just feels a bit kind of jealous, because I know that he said he was going to handle it, but then... Milo said, no, we need to hire a professional. So I think Sameenko's a little bit jealous and a bit sour about that. And there's the scene where he goes to sort of threaten Malvo in his motel room.
Yeah. I know that scene.
Yeah, because we didn't talk about this in the Malvo episode, and it's an absolute crime we didn't, because it's one of the strangest things.
Yes, it really
I've never seen somebody do a badass poop in
A badass poop. That's certainly not a line I thought would ever be recorded on this podcast, but I'm telling you now, Thomas, I'm so glad that it is.
Me too. Yeah. I mean, it kind of ties into the sort of like dog type thing of sort of like marking
it's
territory.
Marking territory, yeah. It's absolutely...
And of course, he called Sameenko a fire hydrant at the beginning, and what the dogs do to fire hydrants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's almost like he pre-planned it. He knew that that somewhere down the line I'm gonna shit in front of this man. But yeah, what a way of intimidating someone. And I mean, it works. It's, what a way of showing your power over someone than just dropping trow and and taking a poop.
Yep. Right in front of them. Yep. And like, he leaves and he leaves the door open, so just anybody could be walking by.
Just anyone, and I don't think Malvo would care in the slightest.
Nope.
I think he'd probably invite someone in if someone would walk past, to be fair.
Yeah, or just been like, you're out of toilet paper.
Yeah, could you pass me a roll? Like, I'm gonna go. But yeah, it's interesting, the fire hydrant and the marking territory analogy. I hadn't picked up on that until now. And of course, Stavros himself has a connection to dogs.
Yes, King.
With King the dog. Again, that running theme of kings.
Yes.
With Stavros, King the dog, he's the supermarket king. All of his, he's practically sitting on his throne with his stained glass windows behind him. Essentially in his castle. And his whole mindset, of course, that he is above. He's chosen by God. To be king over his dominion. And much like many kings, it all comes crumbling down around him. And the first sign of trouble, of course, is with poor old King.
Yeah, I mean, Malvo kills a dog.
Malvo literally kills a dog. Like, how do you not become the most evil character in all of fiction if you don't kill a dog?
And interesting little connection as well is there's also a dog named King in another Noah Hawley series, which is Legion.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so David Haller, he had a childhood dog that was called King, but as the series progresses, you find out that everything might not be quite what it seems with that dog, but that's spoilers for Legion. That's probably another podcast.
That'll
watch
be Legion podcast.
It's fantastic.
Yes.
Oh my goodness! I mean, it's the guy who does Fargo doing an X-Men series by way of Twin Peaks. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. I'm surprised I haven't watched it yet. I just need to track it down.
You can't in the UK. It's really hard to find. Is the thing?
Yeah. Everything in the UK is so bloody difficult. I mean, Fargo season 4 was like out for a year in America, essentially.
Yeah.
Before it was recently broadcast. A couple of months ago, maybe. Over
on Channel 4. Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. Crazy.
But anyway, back to Stavros.
Yes.
Actually, Yeah, I think with Stavros and Sameenko as well, did you get any sort of like Emmett Sy vibes from them? Sort of like a less friendly version of Emmett and Sy.
Yeah, that weird kind of lackey henchman bodyguard meets kind of almost, I think it's more brotherly with Sy and Emmett. I think with Ray out of the picture, Sy kind of takes that position of, brother from another mother.
Yes, definitely.
And I think with Sameenko and Stavros, it's certainly less friendly, but he trusts this guy with his his son's life towards the end. Yeah. So there's definite some loyalty and some trust there with those two. But he is just such a miserable bastard, isn't he? He's just nothing. He's not happy about any of it. And I love the line of Stavros when he's deciding not to park in the car park.
Yes.
And tell my son I love him. Yeah, I'm not going to tell him that.
I'm not going to tell him that.
And he just not phased.
Absolutely, yeah.
Again,
it ties
Dimitri as well.
Yes, I was gonna. Yeah, because his son, who, bless him, he's not been blessed in the intelligence department.
No, not the sharpest nail in the toolbox, but he's certainly the funniest. He's certainly the nicest.
He's very sweet, and
he's a pun fan, so you've got to give him credit for that.
Yes. What are some of his best zingers? Some of Dimitri's best zingers.
I think the first one he has is the what's a martial artist's favorite kind of drink? Karate.
It's tea.
Like tea.
And you just get the sense that, he's been doing this since he came out of the womb, and his dad is just so sick of it.
Yeah. He's probably thinking, this is my heir, my idiot son, just walking in here doing terrible puns while I'm conducting business, sorting out blackmail.
Yes. And of course his wife as well.
Yes, Helena. Or Helena.
Helena, yes.
Helena.
Who has been completely almost the complete opposite of the Oliver Platt Carlos Diaz thing. This actress looks completely different, and you get the sense this woman she has let the wealth really change her.
Yes.
In a major way.
Definitely. I suppose, both of those family members just feed into that, that king kind of. What do you call it? Aesthetic or atmosphere, I suppose. You've got your idiot heir that kind of will eventually take over the throne, but is kind of lived in luxury all his life and kind of doesn't have his wits about him. And he met his wife when he was down and out on his luck, and she's kind of absorbed this all this wealth and air, and wants to look young and live a rich life, and ends up wanting to, chuck a husband and get a divorce and take 50%.
Exactly, yeah. And, clearly she's having an affair with Don Chumph, right?
I don't know if it's ever properly stated, is it? But I definitely think that's definitely the overtone with those two.
Mm-hmm.
And poor Don Chumph.
Oh. He's again not a bright character, but possibly the most brutal, tragic assassination in the entire series.
Yeah, he's kind of like the fool, isn't he? Of that dynamic. He's kind of like the clown of the court.
Mm-hmm. Very much so, yeah.
And like a lot of fools in a lot of fiction and things, they always somehow end up getting involved in some scheme with the king or assassination plot or, some kind of secret. And much like an actual fool, of course, is way over his head when it comes into cahoots with Lorne Malvo.
Yeah, who would Malvo be in the court? Because he plays all the sides. Because obviously he meets up with Stavros, but he also meets up with Helena and like pretends to be a divorce attorney and being like, I want to make sure that you get the money that you're entitled to. But then obviously when he realizes that Don Chumph has been blackmailing Stavros,
yes, which he finds out because of his fake tan, isn't it, on the note?
Yes, exactly. And so he also like throws his lot in with him, and so again he's playing all sides against each other, like Absolutely. A sort of. I'm trying to think, who would that be in a court scenario? I think of a kind of like Henry VIII kind of. Would it be a Cardinal Wolsey type?
Possibly, yes, that kind of figure, or let me think. I recently watched Lord of the Rings again, so I guess Malwo's kind of like the worm tongue of kind of the poison in everyone's ear, but that's,
Exactly.
The Honest Iago, maybe from Othello, that kind of...
Yes, very much
always,
so.
He plays up the fact that he's doing you a favour, that he's always on your side, he's always got your back, he's your best friend, he'll catch the guy, but of course he's the one who's been pulling the strings the whole time.
And like Iago, it results in a dead wife. So.
Yes, too true. Yes,
very much so.
It's not a very happy life for Stavros, is it?
It's not. No. Yeah. It from desperate beginnings and then finding this money, which I guess he thinks is going to give him happiness. And I think this is the closest that we get in this series, which the main plot isn't really to do with money, even though Noah Hawley says he's heavily influenced by that quote at the end of the movie of like, you did all this and for what?
For a little bit of money.
Yeah. And I think that, it's Stavros' story, which is to do with this kind of finance and
profit.
What's the word I'm looking for?
Monetary
capitalism.
Capitalism.
Yeah. This kind of capitalist theme which runs throughout a lot of the seasons. And I think this is where it's most evident of this guy who kind of equates money with the power of God. And so I think it's the fact that he can say, I'm a Christian, I believe in God and all that, but he worships money. He clearly, he puts all his trust in the Yankee dollar, as it were. That he comes off from Greece in search of that kind of American dream.
Yeah, and I think he literally kind of sells his soul for a life. It's a Faust. Sort of situation, he sells his soul to the devil, to Mephistopheles, for a short life of luxury and every desire and every want that you could ever need. I think Stavros' story is kind of the morality tale of the show. It's it's almost an Aesop's fable kind of morality tale of every little thing that happens to him. He's slowly learning, oh my God, I've been so focused on money, and that's really not what's important here. My dog's dead, and my marriage is breaking down, my son's life is in danger, and he treats his son like some sort of idiot throughout the whole show.
Even though he's the one who works it out.
Exactly.
When I read, he's the one who's like, apparently the crickets aren't native to here, so I rang the pet shops, and guess what? And his father just cuts him off and says, never mind about that, get in the car and drive off. And he sends his son off to his death. Effectively.
It's his ignorance and that greed and that kind of, that power that takes over, that goes, no, I'm right, because I'm the king, I'm your father, I'm chosen by God, and you need to listen to me. And it's tragic. It's a Greek tragedy in that he's coming from a good place with his son at that point.
Yeah.
He wants to protect his son. But of course, the Greek tragedy is that he's just destined to become destitute and for his whole life to crumble around him, for his empire to fall into the sea, for quoting season 2 of Fargo.
Mm-hmm. And again, that is the lowest point for him, isn't it? When he sees all them fish and he just is trudging towards the car going, buddy, Dimitri, and he sees his son lying there dead, and he's just crying to the heavens, but I gave it back.
Yep. It's that Midas touch. He's got everything he's wanted, but ultimately, when he the things that really matter, that he actually wants, the love of his wife and his son, he ends up, quite literally send them to their death, as you said.
I mean, like, because with regards to, like, sort of his solution, which is to put the money back, because originally he thinks, okay, I'm going to pay these guys because, you know, Malvo's been getting into his head and been, I think, swapped his pills so he can't sleep and filling his shower with blood. So, you know, this guy is cracking. You see, like, there's so many times where he's, like, gritting his teeth together and he's just can't stop shaking and sweating. And like you say, he's complaining about this heat, and he just feels like he's going through the ringer.
And back problems as well. His first meeting with Malvo, he's boasting about something, and then it instantly is cut off with him being like, "Oh, on the back of a 90-year-old." Mm-hmm. You know.
So everything he boasts about, that's kind of like cut short by some kind of physical shortcoming, as it were, that suddenly is inflicted upon him.
Exactly.
And so when he agrees to pay, but then he changes his mind and he thinks, oh no, I know what needs to be done. This money needs to be brought back. But again, like, to me at least, that's a sign that it's like, it's still just about the money though.
Yes.
Like, you're not seeing the big picture here. That it's not about the money.
No. His heart is in the right place, but just his logic is skewed. His philosophy is still too profit orientated, and he just needs to focus on the actual things that, you know, the fact that his soul is essentially on the line.
Yes,
I mean, you know, with the plague of, you know, all the raining fish and everything when his son dies, that's not a part of Malvo's scheme. He didn't orchestrate fish falling from the sky, did he?
No.
So in a way, you know, you could certainly look at it as the biblical references as kind of more as a parallel or a parable that this is sort of akin to. But in the end, I think you could argue that maybe he literally has been fighting God, or has been trying to appease God, and God has just gone, no, you still don't get it. You know, maybe God didn't send Malvo in the end, but Malvo just ended up having to be there. And he thought, well, maybe this will, you know, knock some sense into him. But it ended up not. But we haven't really discussed kind of all the trials Stavros has gone through, that Malvo's sort of put him through the ringer.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of the order that they came in.
Well, he complains of back trouble and this humidity, this heat, which I think is kind of an early warning signs just by Malvo's mere presence in the room, I think.
Particularly since, like, you know, there's a lot of references to everything being cold all the time and it always snowing. And so how is this guy... Yeah. It's almost as if he's hoarding the heat.
Well, exactly.
But, like, to his own detriment.
Yeah, well, he's boasting about, you know, he's got mangoes and limes in goddamn January. You know, so he's certainly wants you know what isn't there, essentially. He wants the heat. He wants all this exotic fruit for his supermarket empire. He wants.
Yes.
Even though logically he shouldn't have it, and he should just be content with, you know. I mean, he's complaining about it being so hot. Just go outside. It's literally snowing. Like he's in this prison of his own design, essentially. With this heat. He's built his own prison, his own hell, essentially. And again, the heat and hell and the St. Lawrence reference and all that kind of thing. Maybe he's subconsciously putting himself into the pain of St. Lawrence. Maybe, you know, he burnt at the stake, and maybe he's, you know, puts the thermostat up a couple degrees, and tries to feel as close to his chosen saint as possible.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's sort of a subconscious thing of just like, I don't deserve any of this.
Maybe.
So it's a kind of self-punishing kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely that kind of self-flagellation kind of thing. Again, with the kind of saint analogy. Yeah, he's subconsciously kind of, he feels racked with guilt. But much like characters in this show, a lot of them don't realise it until far too late.
Yes.
But yes, some of the other stuff that he's gone through. Of course, we talked about King the dog, rest in peace, Rip King, and his horrific blood shower.
Yes, so like, didn't he get like Malvo gets pig's blood from like
pig's blood into the plumbing system? Yeah, and both of those are designed by Malvo.
Yes.
And the switching of his medication as well, and his kind of weird trip that he has.
Mm-hmm.
And then just
the locusts.
Yep, and all the locusts from the pet shop. Yep, exactly. And then at the end, I think it is just the fish and his son dying. I think.
And again, you said that Malvo didn't orchestrate that, but I suppose some people might argue that Malvo is this supernatural force, and who's to say if he didn't do that? I mean, we don't know. Is Malvo the devil, or is Malvo some kind of it's difficult though, because you could make an argument that in this case Malvo is this kind of force that is being used to kind of maybe show Stavros the light, even if that isn't Malvo's intention.
Absolutely. I think one thing that anyone could argue is that the series of events, all of Malvo's orchestrated plotting and terrorizing and torture of this man, all those events led up to his son him sending his son away. If all that stuff hadn't have happened, Dimitri would still be alive. So the question is that that Malvo potentially is the devil. Either he knows it or he doesn't, or he's just this allegorical figure, or it's nothing like that whatsoever. But at the end of the day, cause and effect, the actions that have taken place before did end up in his family being ruined.
Yeah. It's sad.
It is sad. Do you remember last week we were talking about, thank God we've got something really cheery and happy to talk about.
Yes. What happened to those days?
We're straight back in it, boys. We're
back in the misery.
Yeah, let's talk about more dead dogs. Woo!
But there's funny bits too. It's funny.
Oh yeah. He's a funny character. He's a Greek tragedy mixed with a Greek comedy, as they often are, a Shakespearean mixture of the two.
Exactly. I mean, that's Fargo to a T, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's like a tragedy with a happy ending, and a comedy with a lot of really sad bits in between.
Oh yes. I mean, some of the best shows like this are just absolutely hilarious, because we're discussing about all these tragic events and plots and character arcs and big biblical themes, but this show is absolutely hilarious.
It is,
and I think a lot of people forget that. With a lot of, I mean, once again, I'm going to mention Sopranos. Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Yes,
but that show is a secret comedy. It's absolutely hilarious. There is, it's literally a joke a minute. There's not a single joke that falls flat in that show. But it's just revered as this big dark drama, and of course there is that. But just some of the things some of the characters say in that show, and some of the little, there's a whole motif in the show of all these gangsters, these big tough guys trying to give people advice or talk about things, but just mess up a word or two.
Yes,
I mean, there's the scene of excuse me. There's a scene of Bobby and Tony talking about, the state of the world, and Bobby Baclar goes, Quasimodo predicted all of this. And obviously he means Nostradamus, because he's thinking of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And it's just like, you're such an idiot, man. And there's so much stuff, especially with Stavros, like we said, with the heat and the St. Lawrence stuff.
I mean, there's there's a recurring thing throughout a lot of these shows of just like the person who's trying to be a badass and just not quite pulling it off. I mean, you get a similar sort of thing with Breaking Bad. Again, everybody looks at Walter White and be like, oh, I want to be like Walter White, and it's like Walter White's an absolute loser. He just thinks he's cool.
But didn't you hear the quote? He said, "I am the one who knocks." That was pretty freaking badass, right?
But it doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. He's such he's this washed up middle-aged chemistry teacher, and he just keeps failing at absolutely everything. Even when he has some success, he fucks it up at every turn.
Because people remember the bits where, he like throws the exploding bit into Go's office, but people forget the bit where like he's listening to his answering machine and like says I've got your divorce money right here, and grabs his crotch too hard, falls over and bangs his head on the table.
All the time that he throws an entire pizza on the roof.
Yes. And I think that's kind of similar to Stavros. Again, like I said, he kind of carries himself like a mob boss. I think he tries to model himself like a kind of, Tony Soprano style mobster.
Oh, he would fit right in The Sopranos. He'd fit perfectly in that show.
But the dude owns a supermarket. He's not a king. He's not a god. He owns a supermarket, and it's like you throughout the show. There's a lot of kind of naming of sort of like, Emmett is the parking lot king of Minnesota, and all these things of like equating this kind of divine or royal status to these people who are just people. And that's one thing that I love about this show is that it just shows just kind of like the folly of people who think that they're all that but clearly aren't.
Who think they have a divine right over these large concrete buildings. Like, that's it.
Yes.
That's what their empire is. It's parking lots and supermarkets.
Mm-hmm. And yet but meanwhile, you've got the frozen tundra out there where where the wild things are, and they go out there, they get eaten alive.
Exactly. And it's, the real quote-unquote badasses of the show are the ones, without ego. I don't think Malvo particularly has an ego. I just think he's so sure of himself, so sure of how the world works, that everything he does is chilling, and it is, pretty badass, but in a horrifying way.
I would almost disagree with that.
Really?
I think that Malvo's ego is sort of what does him in the end. In that
at the end, yes, okay.
Because I think it's when Lester starts becoming a bit of a threat. And, in the same way that, Lester can't walk away from Malvo, I think that Malvo actively coming after Lester is a sign that he's like, ooh, I don't like the fact that this guy bested me in any way, and so I'm going to go and kill him. And ultimately, it's that giving into that ego which leads to him getting caught in the bear trap and letting the postman come and shoot him.
Yep. Well,
which is such a humbling way to die.
Absolutely. Well, I suppose maybe Hansi is perhaps more of a better example. But even when he turns into Moses in season 1, he becomes
a Stavros type figure, doesn't he?
Yeah. So even Hansi Dent, who seemingly, I would definitely say throughout the show when he's Hansi, has absolutely no ego. He's proud of his heritage, and he's a war vet, but he only kind of discusses it when he's being people spitting in his drink and abusing him essentially. But even him at the end, he's drawn back into that world,
exactly,
to that power over people and just things, and in the end, they all fall into the sea.
Yep, and he's again surrounded by fish, and it's such a humbling, way for Stavros' story to end, because we never see him afterwards. That's literally where his story ends. So where do you think he is now, Jack?
That's a very fair point, because what's happened? He's still the supermarket king. Seemingly the blackmailing is over. His dog is dead. His son is dead. I'm not sure. There's two possibilities for a character like that. I think one of them is instant repent, and then I think becomes a devout Christian at that point. I think if there is any moment for that kind of character to properly devote himself to God, it would be a moment like that where he'd be on his knees going, I'm going to give it all up. I'm going to sell the business and I'm just going to, become a monk somewhere.
And maybe like the death of Dmitri, tragic as it is, maybe that's the thing that brings him and Helena back together.
Possibly, yeah. It is that biblical kind of thing of God challenging, certain characters, certain people in the book with harming their family members, and at the end it is their faith that kind of preserves them at the end. And so maybe
Abraham and Isaac.
Exactly. So maybe that's his moment of going, okay, get back with the wife. We're going to become a family unit again. We're going to try. I'm going to realize what's important in my life. But I'm not sure. I don't know if they will get together.
Yeah, I mean, if that's like the light side ending, what would the dark side ending be for Stavros?
There's a couple. I think one of them is that maybe he just offs himself. I think after something like that, you'd not understand. Well, you'd understand why someone would do something like that, and I think he definitely could do. Perhaps gives himself to God, takes his life so that he can leave this world and go to the next. Or he just spirals back into more greed and drink and just, becomes fatter on his throne and, just becomes this bitter, twisted old king on his throne with no love for anything anymore apart from just amassing more wealth because that's all he's got left.
I think that there's a recurring theme throughout all the seasons, which is the kind of death of the family for the sake of business.
Yes.
And I think that that dark ending, would be, Stavros just, saying, okay, so, family's gone, I'll just throw myself fully into business and, like you say, become immersed in this world of commerce and greed.
Yeah.
And you can almost imagine him at that point, one day he hears a knock on the door and VM Varga comes in and he's like, I've got a little proposition for you, Stavros.
Supermarket King. Yes, oh God, no, here we go. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to see that scene.
It would be very interesting.
Yeah.
But I hope that, I hope Stavros gets his act together.
I hope so too. I think he's been through enough.
Yes.
But maybe there's a parallel with him and the parable, that Gus and his neighbour discuss.
Oh, yes.
With the man who gives everything, gives, all of his wealth, all of his money, all of his time, who gives his kidney, but not just his kidney. I want to give my skin, but not just my skin. I want to give my spleen, but not just my spleen. And ends up, killing himself in the bathtub and giving all of his body. Perhaps in a way that's maybe is where he ends up. Maybe he feels like, it starts with him wanting to give back the money to God, seemingly. And maybe, where his family's taken away, he wants to give his business, but feels like he still wants to give.
Wow. Yeah, from being a man who takes and takes to a man who gives and gives.
Who gives so much that, he becomes nothing at the end.
Wow. Quite possibly.
Oof. What a depressing episode this has turned out to be.
But I mean, with relation to that parable as well, I think that there is very much a serious man kind of allegory in this, and very much particularly in the same way that is it Larry Gobkick or something?
Yeah.
Who throughout the thing, he keeps on saying that he hasn't done anything, and at the end he finally does something, and that is the moment where he gets the news that he's that he might have something seriously wrong with him when his doctor rings him, and also when his son encounters the tornado. And in much the same way, it's after Milos finally decides to take action, but clearly the wrong course of action, that the fish tornado happens and his son faces the end of it.
It's a recurring theme within the show, that kind of it's too late to have done some good. I mean, you discussing the tornado instantly makes me think of Rabbi in season 4. You know, he goes out to do some good. The one time he says, you know, either I'm dead or I'm in jail. You know, one time he doesn't say it. He goes out and sucked into a tornado.
Mm-hmm. Another character that it reminds me of is actually the Big Lebowski. In fact, I think that there's a scene where the same choral music is playing in Milos's study when Malvo comes to meet him, as when the dude goes to visit the Big Lebowski after his wife has been kidnapped.
Yes.
And he's staring into the fire. I swear
fireplace.
it's the same choral music that's playing. And they're
might
very
be.
similar sort of figures, aren't they?
Absolutely are. I recently saw what the song was called. Where was it?
Is it a Mozart piece?
It is
One of the Requiems or something?
Here we go. Yes, Requiem. Librera Me.
I think it might have been, because I recently watched Amadeus as well, and I think it featured in that.
That's so weird. I also recently watched Amadeus.
Oh, well, hang on. Did you watch the movie version? Because I watched the play version.
I watched the movie version, yes.
Both very good.
Yep. Oh, F. Murray Abraham. Deserved that Oscar. Thoroughly deserved.
He's so good. Yeah, I watched the version with Lucian Masmarty.
Oh, very nice.
He's fantastic. He's really good as well.
I need to see that
very
version.
very different, but very, very
different
good.
Salazar, yeah. So yeah, Requiem, Libera Me, which I imagine means liberate me, perhaps. Although I'm not an expert. All I'm saying is it looks like the word liberate, and the second word is me. So you know,
you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to put that together.
You don't have to be Columbo. There's some missing pieces here. But yeah, that's played during the scene of where he's discussing St. Lawrence.
Yes, it is.
Which is after King the Dog is killed, and the second blackmail note is delivered with an increase, of course, to like $1 million now. Instead of the very specific sum of money that Don Chump wants for his Turkish bath.
Oh, Don.
Oh,
Dom,
God.
you
innocent
sweet
soul.
idiot.
Sweet fool.
Yeah. And of course, Stavros is the man who's present when Malvo espouses his man equals animal theory, his whole philosophy of, you know, there are no saints in the animal kingdom, which, speaking of which...
Oh my God, that was a segue!
I'm very proud of that segue. That's right, it's time for No Saints in the Animal Kingdom, the part of the show where we take the character we've been discussing and we place them on the animal food chain and try and think about what their spirit animal might be. And this is going to be an interesting one, because just before you say anything, Jack, I have a very strange piece of trivia for you.
Oh my God, I'm holding on to my seat.
I'm
awaiting with bated breath.
I was on the Fargo wiki, and at the bottom there was a little trivia section, and this was the one piece of trivia which I knew I had to include because it's so weird. Stavros Milos shares exactly the same name as a character from Woody Allen's Everything You Want to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask, in which he is a shepherd who owns a sheep that Gene Wilder falls helplessly in love with.
Oh my God.
So if you've never seen this film, Gene Wilder sleeps with a sheep in this movie.
Yes, that's the trivia fact you wanted to add in the show, isn't it? Not that it relates anything to Fargo, just that Gene Wilder once played someone who fell in love with a sheep.
Yes. But yeah, just found it very interesting that one of the characters, the shepherd who owns the sheep, is called Stavros Milos. Do you think that's intentional? Because
I was going to ask you that. Wow.
Struggle to see a connection, to be honest.
Maybe it's just a little Easter egg thing, you know, people like having the same name from something that they love.
Yeah.
But there could certainly be a shepherd allegory here, maybe.
I suppose
some sort
so.
of biblical reference. He's trying to herd his family at the beginning from the storm. He's trying to do, what's best for them. Then it ends up coming to a bunch of money, a bunch of power and wealth, and he leaves his flock behind. And concentrates on his empire he's built until the point, where the wolf comes in. Yeah. And, at the end, his flock dies.
Yeah. Oh, does Sameenko die as well?
I think he dies as well in the car crash, yeah.
Yeah. I thought he might, yeah.
Yeah, another one of his
flock.
But,
I've never seen Woody Allen's Everything You Want to Know About Sex, but Afraid to Ask. But if I do, maybe I'll be able to see something and be like, oh, so that's why it is. But
I have
who
seen
knows?
It, but a long time ago. But I do remember Gene Wilder in that film, to be fair. Yeah, it is quite a memorable part of that movie where he falls in love with a sheep. It might be due a rewatch, perhaps.
Quite possibly. But anyway, yes. So, Stavros. What animal is Stavros? Now, Jack, you said you had some interesting ones this time, so I'd love to hear them.
It's not going to be like the last times where I've kind of gone, this is the animal, where I've chosen one particular thing, and then alluded to stuff afterwards. I've kind of been reading up a lot on Aesop's fables lately. And
that's a good shout.
I thought this character was the perfect character to kind of see what parallels lie within Aesop's fables. Because his entire storyline is an Aesop's fable.
Yeah.
It is a morality lesson. It's a morality play, essentially, is what it is. And so two have been brought to my attention. The first one, these are only short, so I'll read them out.
Okay.
The first one is The Goose with the Golden Eggs. One day a countryman, going to the nest of his goose, found there an egg all yellow and glittering. When he took it up, it was as heavy as lead, and he was going to throw it away because he thought a trick had been played on him. But he took it home on second thoughts and soon found that it was an egg of pure gold. And so every morning, the same thing occurred. As he grew rich by selling his eggs... he grew rich by selling his eggs every single day. And as he grew rich, he grew greedy. And thinking to get... Oh, pop-up has come up onto the screen as I was reading out. Damn you! Damn you, internet! And thinking to get it all at once, all of this wealth, all of these golden eggs, he took the goose and killed it. He cut open this goose to find that there's nothing within. And so the morality of that Aesop's fable is that greed often overreaches itself.
That's really good.
He obviously takes the part of the countryman, the capitalist, who
finds
farmer,
the golden egg.
Who finds
the
golden
really
egg.
Good.
He's the shepherd, the farmer. He's in charge of all of his flock, and he ends up getting them all killed in the end. So I thought that was quite an interesting one to choose. To choose not an animal for this one, but I think for certain characters later on, particularly in season 3, I've got some ideas for some characters that perhaps aren't animals, but are still within the realms of. But that's spoilers. That's spoilers for a future episode we haven't even recorded
there,
yet.
Boy.
So
Easy now.
Easy now, boy. Oh, there, you damn nag.
We haven't had a horse yet, have we?
No, we haven't had a horse. Yeah, that's a fair point. Maybe somewhere down the line we'll have a horse.
Yeah.
Here's hoping. Yes, and the second one, the second fable is called The Dog and the Shadow. So the story is, a dog is walking home with a piece of meat in his mouth. On his way home, he crosses a river, and he looks into the river. He mistakes his own reflection for another dog, and wants his meat also. And so he opens his mouth to attack this dog, but the meat falls into the river, and is never seen again. And so the parable there is just to be happy with what you have, and don't fall into the temptation of avarice and greed. Again, similar vein with the goose and the golden eggs. Just learning to be happy with what you have rather than what you don't have.
Wow.
Because perhaps that's enough.
That's so good, Jack. I'm really happy that you came up with those. You've put so much work into that.
Oh, and well, thank you.
I love that you've approached it from like a morality perspective, and also you've put so much more thought into it than I have into mine.
Oh God! Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you so much. Well, God, what the hell's your one going to be then?
Okay.
I'm excited now.
Oh man, mine is going to be so lazy by comparison.
Nonsense.
So I mean, first of all, I have seen videos that equate Stavros with a dog because of the dog king. He's the king. They both kind of, are dogs that get eaten by the wolf. But we've already got so many dogs and potential dogs. I didn't want to go down that route. And obviously, you've got the name of Milos' story, the story that he's kind of pushing forward, his narrative, his true story, which is that of the American Phoenix. He sees himself as the Phoenix, reborn not from the flames but from the frost. And so immediately I thought, oh well, yeah, because he's trying to see himself as a phoenix, but again he hasn't come from the flames. He's came from this kind of snowy background. So I thought, is Stavros Milos a penguin? And I kind of imagined them sort of like waddling through the snow, and this image of sort of like the, yeah, I mean you can see it, can't you?
I totally can see it. I can totally see it. And of course you bring up the penguin as well.
I mean, yeah, I would. For those of you who don't know, I'm a big. I mean, we're both massive DC Comics fans, and I have a bit of an obsession with the character of the Penguin. I'm not sure why. I just love him. But I guess thinking about Dimitri as well, and the idea that it's the father penguin who has to take care of the egg, and it's clear that. I think. Because I think he's taking care of Dimitri. I think he goes to visit his mother, but I think he stays mostly with his father, doesn't he?
Yes. Because of course he works there as well. At the supermarket.
Yes. Exactly. So I guess Stavros is sort of a reluctant penguin, a penguin who dreams of flying, but ultimately has to come back down to the frost and the snow and the fish.
I think maybe he even attempts to fly, and as he attempts to fly, perhaps, he forgets that he's the one who's carrying his egg, and so as he, flies off that cliff to, flap his wings and fails and falls into the fish, his egg cracks on the ground or falls into the sea.
Mm-hmm.
Another tragic animal figure.
Yeah,
with the penguin there, but yeah, it's interesting. The born from frost, rather than risen from the ashes, he's kind of stumbled out of the cold.
Yes,
he kind of stumbles out of the cold, finds this treasure, and then finds himself in the frying pan, being constantly hot and all this danger all around. And then
again, that maybe this mentality of like, I never want to be cold again. That's why I have to have all this heat around me all the time.
And he ends up burning down his castle, essentially. Yes. That wasn't a lazy one. That was a good one, the penguin choice.
Oh, thank you.
That was a very good choice.
I appreciate that, man. Okay.
All I did was read some stories.
No, man. That was... You took initiative. I'd literally just, sort of stumbled upon that one. Just I was thinking, a phoenix, but cold instead of hot. Penguin? Yeah, let's go with that. I literally thought about the... Thank you, I appreciate that, mate. I literally thought about the whole egg parallel and the Dimitri thing, literally just... But actually, I think while you were doing the goose with the golden egg, to be honest, so...
Yes, so, another bird-egg synergy there we have.
Exactly. So again, I wouldn't want to do this podcast with anyone else, Jack, because you keep me sharp. You keep me sharp.
Oh, I keep you on your toes, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Well, bless
Very
you.
much
You
so.
are the sweetest, the kindest, wonderfulest host of any podcast out there on the net.
Oh, bless
And
you, mate.
I feel very privileged for this.
I do as well,
It
man.
feels good. It feels good to be back. Because last week, I was there, but I was ill. For posterity, for future historians, I had contracted COVID, and so that was a weird time. But I'm not complaining because comparatively, I'm young and I'm healthy, and so the symptoms weren't that bad. So I've got no room to complain whatsoever. But still a weird thing to process, weird thing to get, and to be locked up away. And so to be back for this one has been a real privilege and an honour, Thomas. So thank you very much.
Tremendous. Thank you, Jack, and thank you all for listening. We hope that you guys have enjoyed this, our fifth episode. So please keep on listening. Let us know what you think about the show on either our Facebook page or our Twitter page. We'd love to hear any theories that you have, any ideas you might have for the show as well, any kind of ways we can shake up the format a bit. And,
just your opinions, just your love for the show in general.
Absolutely.
Has been astounding. A couple of people I know have been listening to this podcast. My parents, bless them, listen. So hello, Mum and Dad, if you're listening. They listen to it in the car sometimes. They've listened to every episode so far, so that's nice.
Oh wow! My mum tried. Bless her.
Oh, she tried. Yes,
she tried.
I can understand. It is a trying podcast. I can understand,
particularly if you're not familiar with the show with Fargo. So
yes, yes, and a lot of people I know have been a fan of the show Fargo, and some of them have given them rewatches. Been lovely to see. A friend of mine, Lydia, who's said that she's the show's biggest fan. Which she said to my face, so I'm like, well, are you just saying that? Is this the truth? But she's listened to every episode. And so thank you to everyone who's been listening, whether this is your first episode or your last episode. If this is really
quite possibly,
if this has put you off podcasts forever, so long, and thanks for all the fish.
Very good. Hey, thank you so much to George Matthew for the incredible theme song that you heard at the beginning and you will hear at the end of this episode. You can check out some of his other stuff on his SoundCloud account at Georgie Boy and Numbers, I believe.
Yes,
or you can...
the links are in all of our social medias.
Oh yeah, good.
As well as
then I don't have to say anything.
Yes. All the links to all of his stuff is in the description of every episode on whatever platform you're listening on, as is the Instagram of Dan Reese, who has done our incredible artwork, and they are open for commissions, and they don't have any at the moment, so my god, get yourself some artwork.
Yes.
Boy, can they draw.
Absolutely. Okay, well, that's going to be all from us. So until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and wrap up warm because it's cold out there.
Oh yeah, you betcha.